So we're now going to welcome Jussi Tahtinen of Nitro Games to talk about the next wave, Nitro Games and the next wave of games. So you'd like to come to stage. Give him a round of applause, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Slides up. Off we go.
Thank you. Good morning. Good to be back here. I love this venue so much compared to where we used to be some time ago, so good to be back. I'm Jussi Tahtinen from Nitro Games, and today we talk about future. And why we do so is because I'm an old fart, and I've been playing games and making games essentially my whole life. And one thing that I love the most about games as a hobby and games as a profession and the whole damn industry is that there's always changes happening one way or another. And that's one of the things that I've been doing a lot in the past, and Nitro has been doing a lot, is trying to predict the future. Not the boring sort of mega trends or macro level phenomena that everybody's talking about, like AI and these type of things, but more like, can we find something a little bit more in the niche pocket that we could somehow apply to our business and the games that we do next. So today, again, we're going to throw some guesstimates about what might happen in the future and what are we doing about it, so that when we fast forward 1 year, 2 years, you can call me a guy who had no clue what he was talking about. So let's see. And who we are, we're a Finnish mobile games powerhouse. We're a little bit more than 80 people at the moment. We're based here in Helsinki and also 1 hour east from here in a place called Kotka. And then we have a bunch of people scattered around the world working remotely or in our partner studios and that stuff. And what we do is we do games that go boom. So action and shooter games is our niche. That's something where we specialize in. So if you're looking into something on the other categories, then we're not your guys. So today we very much look at everything through this lens, because this is something we know about. There's plenty of things that are fantastic in gaming, but we have no clue about those. So action and shooter games. And how we do things in Nitro is essentially that we have our own games, which we develop on our own, and we seek to go all the way from game concepting into pre-production, production, soft launching, publishing, live operating, the whole shebang, including the whole data funnels and publishing activities and what have you as well. But then we also work with different type of partners. We've been around for more than 15 years now, so we've been doing tons of projects with different partners on different platforms, and that's another side of looking at things when we look at Nitro. But basically, stuff that we're going to go through today is basically, like I said, looking into the future. And we will begin briefly by having a view on the world that, okay, what have we seen already? Where do we think the world is at the moment? And what do we think that it means for us moving forward? And for anybody else who might or might not be interested in action and shooter game stuff. And then we will throw a couple of predictions about the future and show what's our take on those predictions, and then we'll leave you guys with that. So then if you are interested, keep an eye on us and see how we're going about those, and then we'll see. But what have we seen already? Basically, when we talk about action and shooter games, it's not just, Call of Duty first-person shooters, but it's games where there's some sort of weapon or weapon-like item which makes things go boom. It's not limited to any specific platform or camera angle or anything like that, but more like a mindset. Who am I as a consumer? What type of entertainment am I enjoying, whether it comes in mobile games form or a console game form, and so on and so on. And we like to position these things as part of the mid-core, even though some games are more on the hardcore side and some might be having elements from more casual games. But that's where we put these games. And what's essentially the status as of now is that shooter games are essentially the shit on all the platforms, one way or another. And what's something that has happened over the last few years is that the role of mobile games when it comes to the total revenues generated by shooter games has increased pretty heavily. Of course, there's tons of big brand games that generate lion's share of this number, but still the whole sort of mobile aspect of the category has definitely opened up over the last few years. And this is something that, tying into us being doing this stuff for quite some time now, how we look at things is that no matter if you look at platform life cycles or if you look at game category life cycles, or if you look at player life cycles, what you tend to see is some sort of waves of same things happening over and over again. And that's something that with shooter games, we believe that it's a phenomenon that has happened already many times in the history of video games. So first you had, PC gaming going on, and then you suddenly had this fantastic invention of introducing mouse into the mix. Then you had Quake, and it became a phenomenon, and one of the first big multiplayer esports type of things. And then you got game consoles where nobody can play a shooter with a pad controller because it's not as good as keyboard and mouse. But fast forward a few years, shooters became the dominant category on consoles as well. Then blah, blah, blah happens mobile. You definitely can't do this shit with a touchscreen because there's no way you are able to aim with a touchscreen and have fluid controls and stuff. And look what's happening now. So that's basically how we look at things, that these same things tend to happen over and over again, but in a slightly different form and format. And why that is, and how we base our expectations about future is essentially the consumer. I bet most of the presentations in events like these are always one way or another about the consumer and the people who create the games trying to figure out what and how and why does the consumer think. And what comes to shooter games, and especially on mobile screens, what we're starting to see now is more and more of people coming to age, let's call it that way, but people who start to be employed and maybe have credit cards and the ability to spend, who have actually grown up with touchscreens as their primary, first and foremost controller device. They might have expanded to PC and console later on because they're gamers, of course they do that, but they have learned how to play with a touchscreen, and that's a big turning point that we expect to just become stronger and stronger moving forward as well. And then, of course, you have old geezers like me who grew up with keyboards and mouses and pads and whatnots. And, of course, we might have a credit card or two in our pocket, so we still love to enjoy these things on mobile as well. But long story short, where we stand now is that shooters are definitely the thing on all the platforms out there, one way or another. That's how we look at things, including also mobile, which is a healthy quarter of the total revenues in this category. Of course, different studies split the category differently, but still, in terms of a big picture, that's good enough. Then, predictions, future, how does it look like? First thing that we're going to talk about is cross-platform, cross-play, because it sounds cool. Every time you introduce an X, things sound cool. So that's something that we're going to talk about. That's definitely a big trend that we're going to see impacting a lot of games and the industry overall. Then secondly, we're going to talk about power of brands. That's an area where we have done quite a few learnings, some of which have been super good, some of which have been epic failures, and some of which have been somewhere in between. But that's definitely a trend where we can expect more and more activity moving forward, so we're going to talk about that. And then last but not least is this fantastic thing called innovation, which is maybe the coolest part of this business, that there is a constant level of innovation to come up with something new. And how does that touch base to action and shooter games? We're going to talk about that as well. But we will begin with the cross-platform and cross-play stuff. So basically, how we look at things is that games are a phenomenon that's so much bigger than any of the hardwares out there. And the direction where everything is moving these days, not just games, is that anything you consume and enjoy, whether it's entertainment or something else, whatever screen you have in your hand is just that. It's just a screen. And the future is building experiences that go beyond any hardware limitations or screen limitations. And something that is happening now more and more, and where we are engaged in, is this concept of playing cross-platform experiences in a cross-play fashion and tying the best parts of all the different platforms together. And by looking at things on a surface, it might seem like, okay, it doesn't necessarily make too much sense to bring some super AAA hardcore experience like Warframe, for example, on mobile, because then you're fighting against the handicaps on mobile and stuff. But on the other hand, when you look at it through the lens of the game developer and the publisher, and look at it through the big grand scheme of things, then it suddenly starts to make a ton of sense. Because then you can introduce the benefits of mobile games marketing and the whole data-driven ecosystem and the whole new different type of consumers that you have on that platform, and make them exposed to your brand. And you can start to move your consumers between different platforms and look at the whole business case so much differently. And we all know that still, even if these things are today super powerful and the development budgets for some of the games on these platforms are already pretty insanely big, we're still quite often talking about single-digit millions at max. Sometimes over lifetime, of course, more, but it's not that common to hear about mobile games which cost more than $100 million to make. Those things have happened already, but it's not common yet. Whereas when you go into the PC and console side, hearing budgets that are in the range of hundreds of millions of dollars, you hear about them all the time, right? So that means that when you're looking at the whole big picture, that, okay, this is my franchise, this is my brand, this is my plan for the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and beyond with the live product, adding a mobile component into the mix is really a no-brainer if you look at it from added cost point of view. But what it unlocks in terms of the ability to boost things to the whole brand through mobile games advertising, that's a whole different story. And that combined with the fact that many people who play, what I refer to the consumers, these days they actually get into this whole gaming thing through touchscreens. So it also acts as a way when you have a long-term strategy with your product to throw in players into your ecosystem when they're still playing touchscreens. Maybe they grow up and start to spend on the mobile version, or maybe they convert to other platforms, who knows. But it's definitely a channel to expand beyond what is possible to do on the more traditional platforms. And for somebody like Nitro, of course, it's a fantastic opportunity to work on some really cool high-tech shit, because working on projects like this, it's of course a dream come true. So cross-platform and cross-play is something that we expect to see happening more and more. And the curious thing moving forward is that how can we decrease the sort of cost of entry on this? And that's something that we're already starting to see more and more in the so-called indie level as well. Smaller companies building products which might be PC and mobile and stuff like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be AAA and super big. Second thing, power of brands. Maybe the recent thing that we have done is the game called Nerf Super Blast, where we used the Nerf brand by Hasbro and built a whole new mobile game universe around that. And this is something that there has been so much discussion about IP and brands, especially in mobile games over the past years. And there has been so many great examples, but also quite a many sort of slap-on IP type of approaches. We have also been looking into some, and we have also been working with some cases with IP which did not turn out that great. But the key thing here again, how we believe that why this is going to still happen more and more, despite there has been so many failures in the past, is the fact that when you actually have a brand to game to audience fit, then it can deliver something that can overcome many of the problems that we face currently, especially if you look at mobile games and the whole challenges with the user acquisition and the data tracking and so on. What better way to position your product than to have a customer that automatically, conveniently attracts just the right target audience? So this is something which, when approached audience first, and then the whole experience is built for that specific audience, and the game and the brand are in a perfect alignment, then we think that it can definitely add value, especially in terms of discoverability and helping to lower the user acquisition costs. But this is something where you need to be super careful that something that might seem like a good fit on the surface isn't necessarily so much that. With Nerf Super Blast, one thing that we have learned so far, which we think are super critical in making sure that the fit actually is there, is that is my brand that I am using as strong as I think it is? Is it such a strong brand that when used with my game that it gives me things like, featurings by the storefronts and stuff that actually adds value? Is it known in those specific countries and by those specific target groups that I am after with my game? And then you think about the visual brand that you build into the game. Does this visual style appeal to that very same audience? And if you go sideways with any of these things, then that match is going to break, and it's very likely it's not going to work out that well. But with Nerf, we knew that what we're targeting is a mass audience of teens and preteens who are basically using these original plastic toys from their childhood and who have a tendency of being pretty damn good with specific type of gameplay. That's how we designed that part. But then, especially in the state side, you have a whole bunch of old farts like me who collect these things. They have their garage full of these blasters and stuff. And again, those are the guys with credit cards. and likely with some sons and daughters and stuff. So then it becomes a family hobby where they do these things together. And that combined with the whole sort of YouTube phenomenon and what's happening virally online means that there is a way to put all these things together. But that's something that we think that moving forward, companies and brand owners are only going to get much, much better with this. That's why you have Netflix looking into gaming. Everybody who has different type of brands and IPs, they're looking into bringing that to gaming one way or another, because there is this added leverage to be found there. So that's number 2. And then the number 3, and this is the most difficult thing, but also the most fun thing, if you ask me, it is the sort of innovation. So games is all about building and creating something new, something that is super fun, something that is supposed to be new, that doesn't exist yet, but also it must not be too new, it shouldn't be too innovative, it shouldn't be too much of this and that, because otherwise people are not going to get it and might be alienated by that. This is especially true on mobile, but of course on any other platforms as well. And there has been quite a many presentations in the past about this classic 80-20 rule, that you should somehow take 80% old and introduce 20% new, and that's the golden ratio for the level of innovation. But while we also pretty much believe in that, one thing that's super difficult is that, okay, how do you then select the parts that you actually put together and why? And that's something that in innovation, coming up with different type of cool ideas, that's not the most difficult thing to do, because we all have great ideas. There's probably 200 game designers in this room right now. There are ways of testing different ideas and how they appeal to different audiences and stuff, and we heard about that earlier today in some other pitch already. So these things, there are ways to go about it. But the challenge comes from the fact that why are we selecting the paths that we are selecting, and how does that help us to solve the problem at hand? And this Autogun Heroes that's now on the slides, this is our latest game release, which we're busy launching. We just started now in June, so it's only a few months old. And we're busy ramping up the game and doing all sorts of great things with it, and it's going well. But the things that were kind of like the key components that, okay, why are we now in this position and why it made sense is basically a few different things. We are all aware of the user acquisition challenges and the data tracking things that have been introduced on the mobile, and one can only expect more and more of that things happening moving forward. So if you want to bring something with your own IP, you need to make it visually so that it automatically clicks with your target audience. Our target audience for this game being plus 30-year-old males who have played maybe run-and-gun shooters when they were kids and stuff, they instantly recognize the gameplay. When they get to the game, they figure it out. But given that we know that they are old farts, plus 30 years old, they maybe are not that good with their thumbs compared to kids, for example. So that's why there has to be some sort of innovation with the controls and gameplay to make it feel like they are actually, masters of gameplay, even though it's super simple. So we took out the whole shooting thing. It automatically fires and aims and all that stuff. So all you need to do is move around and jump. So you need to build the innovation with the audience in mind. And then on top of that, these days on mobile, whether you like it or not, you need to build a freaking badass monetization machine. So the game needs to have insanely strong so-called meta-game components and different progression vectors and all that free-to-play mumbo-jumbo that you need to have there to make sure that if your target audience is people with credit cards who are happy to spend for their hobby, that you then actually put them through that loop. And that then returns back to the drawing board when it comes to the core gameplay. So we have an audience, we have the core gameplay, but now we need to think about the session length, because these guys are busy. They will go and deliver speeches, and then they will have 5 minutes to play before they run into different meetings and stuff like that. So you need to make sure that you have a loop where you give them a little bit of that action enjoyment, but then you go into their pockets again. And then again, a little bit of that action enjoyment, and then they need to get something and something. So you need to essentially innovate everything through that same very lens, which if you ask me and many guys in Nitro, it's always the customer, always your target audience. And that's the part that's usually, at least for us, and I bet something that for others as well is the most difficult, that, okay, how do I justify every single decision I do with the game and the business case through my target customer? But again, when you do that right, we believe that that's something that you're going to see more and more of. So take modern meta gameplays and combine those with classic core gameplays and all these type of shuffles. So then, to wrap things up, our predictions about future, you can hold us accountable for those. Let's meet up in 1 year, 2 years time and see how we did here. But cross-platform, cross-play gaming, that's happening right now and moving forward more and more. Power of brands, we're going to see more and more brands associated with games in new innovative ways, not just IP bolt-ons, slap-ons. And then last but not least, there's going to be expansion in the genre of action and shooter games through product innovation in ways that we haven't even thought about yet. So that's our takes on the future. Thank you.
Hello. While we get we might have room for one quick question while we're getting the chairs out. Does anybody have a question for Nitro Games? People, look at this, thousands of people in the room. So I was going to ask you, how long has the shooter, the jump auto gun, been going? How long has that been out?
That has been out since June.
And how was it going?
It's going well. So we've been increasing it step by step. So it's growing all the time. So
any data?
Our best game so far.
Okay.
If you're interested in the data, you can go to our website because we're a public company, so it's all there. All the revenues and KPIs and everything, it's all there.
It looks great. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Applause, please.